Howdy. Welcome to week 254. And we are high atop the BGW studios in the Innovation Conference Room, which is one of our core values. So we were having a room full of people with Jim Dunn and our Sandler franchise and talking about how to double your business in the next 3 to 5 years. And that was really good. And we had to duck out a little bit early, and they're all mealing around over there because it's finishing up, but we are trying to get on time with you guys. So I think we were a minute late. Sorry about that. This will be fun. It was very interesting because in the conversation of, hey, what are some of the speed bumps you're running into? Hey, tariffs came up, in the conversation, which is interesting. I was at a table with an importer. They do high performance parts for the automotive world, in racing and other areas, but high performance. And they import a bunch of stuff from Europe. So hopefully, especially England, hopefully we will be seeing some progress on the negotiations that I heard about last night, which from the EU. Hopefully that'll be the case. But I thought, before we dive into, all right, navigating uncertainty, because, hey, guess what? We're back in it. We would deal with that. Oh, and also, by the way, next week, Jack, is it true that we are going to see, like, the thriller in Manila is going to be, it's going to pale in comparison to what we've got going on, because we have Team Red of Shoemaker, which are the lobbyists on the Republican side, and Team Blue, which we've already had one of those guys, from lobbyists on the Democratic side. And this should be interesting. So, bring your sunglasses. Fireworks will be happening, I'm sure. It'll be civil because they're part of the same company. So they probably have some esprit de corps that they have to hit. But I think it'll be fun. So next week, stay tuned. 255, that will be the case. So before we launch into some of this stuff, because we've gotten some cues as to, hey, these are some topics that we actually ought to be talking about with regard to tariffs. Like, hey, how does that impact on the accounting side with cost of goods? Oh, Adam Boatsman, he's going to be teed up for that, and we'll see how good he is impromptu. That's his happy space, I think. So anyway, Jack, any current events or anything that you want to talk about? Because I know you want to even get into some personality styles in negotiating.
Yeah, we've been discussing that, and it came up well, first of all, about next week. Very excited about that. And actually, Ryan has been on the program before, maybe in 18 months or so ago, about some stuff.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, okay, they've each been on independently. So now it's good to put them head to head. And they're really great guys. They're very passionate, but very mindful and respectful of each other's positions, and which they kind of have to be since they're in business together. But I mean, they are genuinely that way. Don't know what the price is going to be for me personally for getting them on the show, but I will find out in about 3 weeks when we have our firm retreat down in Florida, and I will see them in person. And either be praised for bringing them together, or be their expressions of anger for bringing them into the same room under the same pulpit. But yeah, and there will be rules of the road, which is, even though they may get political because they're expressing their feelings on things, the audience we're not going to go into political discussion and down those rabbit holes. So I'm asking at this point, and we'll be demanding that next week when we do that, because while everybody has a perspective, we've invited them on to share their perspective, which will be from a certain side of the aisle. So would ask that everybody be mindful and respectful of that, and not try to engage them into a debate between an audience member and one of them. So yes, I am going to
We're
go
not
a little
turning
bit.
this into X or TikTok, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
say most of the time we're
That's
pretty good about
interesting.
that. Sometimes I read stuff that comes across in the chat. I'm like, come on, dude.
Yes, yes, yes. So just a preview
The
of the
mosh pit,
rules.
it will be
Um,
closed.
yeah. And in fact, I don't know, maybe we do turn the chat off so that way there's not even a temptation to do that. But I do want to go kind of off script a little bit because I did unsolicited found came to me an article from a mediation group that our firm uses that others use around the country, and the title of it is Personality Types: Recognizing and Handling 6 Different Types of Participants at Mediation. Um, for me in business negotiations, I kind of look at that as being a mini mediation because what you're doing is you're taking 2 sides and you're trying to find a common ground and move forward.
Yeah.
I did that earlier this morning in reacting to a letter of intent where the other side was very adamant about things, and I said, "This is our position, and why are we arguing about it at the letter of intent stage?" I said, "We're not arguing. We're just making sure that we're trying to avoid an argument down the road to make sure that but I understand the personality types on the other side and which of the group are more aggressive, which are different personalities, good cop, bad cop, however you want to couch it." But I thought this was a very good, concise way of putting personality types in buckets for you to consider when you're negotiating, whether it is for your business or whether it is for something personal, in your life that you're negotiating, and knowing the other side and kind of how to act and react with them. So, and there's no proper way of doing it, and it should be within your personality and comfort zone. But anyway, so the first category is the gambler. This person is seen as a bold risk taker by those around him or her, likely does not experience fear in the same way that others do. As a result, this person may not fear the possibility of going to trial, being cross-examined, or the many negative consequences which can occur the way a normal person would, normal in quotes. Um, then there's the chronic procrastinator who struggle in a mediation or negotiation because they're either not well prepared or not able to consummate a significant transaction. This may stem from indecisiveness, loss of aversion, um, and cognitive issues that cause people to perceive losses as more significant than gains of the same amount. So they're constantly weighing good and bad, but they cannot come to a conclusion and say, okay, well, this is where I see the scales, and then move forward. They're paralyzed. There is the martyr. So this is a person who believes that he or she has a purpose in pursuing or defending a dispute based on principle. Martyrs want to believe that they are doing the right thing, but they are generally fooling themselves because in these cases, um, the judge, jury, arbitrator always culminate in the form of a monetary order or award. So basically, what is the end goal? What is the reward? Where do you want to be? And people lose sight of that because they feel like that whatever loss that they're taking, that they internalize it and just perceive it as being greater than the gain if they had conceded or come to a common resolution. Then there's the emotional responder, which sometimes resemble martyrs, but they also want to punish the other side for something they did or didn't do. This can evolve into a scorched earth litigation where a party can become blinded by anger and refuse to consider reasonable settlement offers or demands. So put that into business context in negotiating, that it's okay, well, you know what, it's the David versus Goliath. We are the ones who are providing the services. We get into that a lot with our clients that have terms and conditions of sale that go with their invoices or their confirmation or the order confirmations. And then what comes back is the other side's terms and conditions. And so problem number one is which terms and conditions actually are part of the contract. And there's legal aspects and maneuvering related to that. But more importantly, it is, okay, well, we're proceeding forward, and what is the belief of the parties as to what the rules are moving forward. And so and it is our way or the highway, and some people feel that way. And there is the attrition warrior who tries to wear down the other party through outspending, strategy, delay, or both. The hope is the other party will eventually be forced into an unfavorable position and settle the case. Now, it's not that that is always bad. Negotiating a matter and the other side is being adamant. and my client does not have to sell his business. And so I was like, all right, we'll just kind of go silent and see what they have to say. Unbeknownst to the buyer, my client's seller had some other offers that came in, and he was considering behind the scenes. And because of their being adamant and their delay, my client, who didn't accept these alternative offers but used them to say this is what's being offered, and he got a higher purchase price. He got better terms on the earnout. He got better terms on, for a bunch of things, and a lot of concessions that they were adamant about, which we wouldn't have leverage if they had not been so adamant, a month prior, and we just went radio silent. So
And that was called Attrition Warrior. Is that
the
what?
attrition warrior. Yep.
Yeah. All right, cool.
And then lastly is the dreamer. Unsophisticated, may be convinced that he or she is holding a winning lottery ticket, or maybe a party who is unable to see that he or she is in serious trouble. So a good way to deal with either scenario is to educate the party on the reality of the situation. A subset of this category believes that litigation or being steadfast is a negotiating tactic. And if they hold fast, that they will eventually get their way. And they're willing, at least initially, to put the cost and pay the cost for that. A common thread through all of these is that, you could say that a lot of this is a matter of principle, at least what the person that is being adamant perceives as a matter of principle. And people get all bowed up and are like, I got to do this for whatever reason, based on their principles, or at least they think it is. But then when you start getting into it and you start having to spend money, then it's okay, and those people who don't have an open checkbook, that's when the reality kind of sits in, that, okay, maybe I should not be as adamant, such, hard ass about it. But by that time, you've fired that bullet that's not going to come back. You have, sent out that nasty demand letter. You may have even filed a complaint, started a legal action. So being mindful of what is motivating the other side and trying to address that, I think is for me, has been the most successful in understanding kind of what's going on the other side. I mean, it could be something that is totally unrelated to what is in front of them, meaning your matter. And so, getting to that, and I've had many occasions where I've had the attorney on the other side say, well, this was going on. There was a divorce going on in the background. There was, somebody was taking care of a parent, or there was an employee there was some theft or something, so related to the business, maybe not related to the business that's going on, that is impacting the way that they are interacting in this negotiation or settlement or whatever it may be. So as you guys know, I'm a fan of the psychology of all of this, and I think it's beneficial to at least hear this and think about that the next time you're in an adversarial, even though it's maybe friendly situation, to make sure that you're not just going 100 miles an hour with your perspective, that you're seeing what's going on around you, and importing that into your negotiations and your discussions. So there
So
ends the
speaking of
psychology
imports
lesson.
and importing, good word choice.
Yes. Nice segue.
Yeah.
There you go.
So is there anything in the market that you're hearing, Adam and Jack, that is eclipsing the uncertainty tied to tariffs?
Zero.
So that is the hot topic.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of people who think they know, but now it's, again, turn on whichever channel and if people think that they know, but then if you listen carefully, they're really, and then they back it down. They're like, well, but that's, there is a possibility that the exact opposite of what I just said might happen. So, no one is saying anything of substance, really.
So I'm interested now, Adam, this is catching you off guard, I know.
I got it. I read it ahead of time.
Did you? Okay. So how tariffs are affecting cost of goods sold, COGS, and inventory valuation. That's one thought. Two, accounting for tariffs and financial statements, and 3, managing cash flow under rising costs?
Yeah. That's a really good question, and it's all bad. But here's the reality. I've got, let's say I'm a manufacturer and I've got inventory that I already have. Like it's already here, can be a distributor. I've already got inventory here. And I've got maybe 30 more days of that, available. I've already got a price, even if I still owe the bill to the supplier, I already have a price point established for that inventory. What I paid for, right? Depending on when I bought something and what it is, if I then make an order to replenish that inventory for, beyond the 30 days, because I'm getting depleted, and it's from a jurisdiction and it's going to have a product that has a tariff associated with it, I've only got, even if I bought it, like I sent the PO pre-tariff, which would mean that I knew what the price was at the time pre-tariff. The tariff is not assessed by the country of origin. The tariff is assessed by U.S. Customs.
Yeah.
So like my contract to your point about the European, brake parts guys, I mean, they don't know nothing about no tariffs. Because they're not doing anything. Like they sold you a brake part for $50. It's the U.S. government that then is saying, by the way, Gary, we're going to need the extra $5, please. When that material arrives on port. So like if you just think about like the conundrum associated with this is if I bought stuff a month ago, it takes 5 to 6 weeks to ship stuff over here.
Yeah.
Stuff that I thought did not have a tariff now has a tariff on it, potentially. Or it might not. Who knows? It's a mystery, right? So
stay tuned.
So if you hit into, problem number 1 is that, okay, accounting for the tariff, right? If I wanted to be like Superman in terms of tariff accounting, then I would say, well, I'm going to go ahead and estimate what I think it's going to be, and we're going to just, blah, blah, blah. You can do that. My suggestion would be when you get the bill, you now owe it, otherwise there's so much uncertainty, it'd be hard to estimate. But anyway, now I've got a problem, right? Problem is I've got 30 days of inventory at $50 and I have the next 30 days at $55.
Right.
So the first question that I have is, what's my inventory valuation then at that point to then arrive at my cost of goods sold option? And again, this is getting into accounting for people, but it's the real deal, right? There's 3 methods of inventory tracking. Method number 1 is first in, first out. So that means that my cost of goods sold for this purpose is that if Jack buys a brake part tomorrow, my cost is $50 because it's the first old inventory, right? And I'm not going to see the impact of that pricing until I deplenish the $50 inventory and I then get into the $55 inventory. Another method is you can use what's called last in, first out, meaning that I'm going to use the highest price, So in that scenario, Jack buys a brake part, regardless of of how much I'm charging Jack, the cost of goods sold that I'm going to track is $55. And then the third method is you can do an average cost between the two, in which case, everything that I sell, whether I paid 50 for it or I paid 50 for it plus a $5 tariff, is $52.50, assuming the equal establishment of inventory. So on the positive side, most inventory systems, whether it's Fishbowl or NetSuite or even QuickBooks Enterprise or whatever, like I'm pretty sure QuickBooks Enterprise does it, but most inventory systems, if you actually have an inventory system, I mean, a lot of clients, their inventory systems called the frickin' spreadsheet. So this would be very difficult if your inventory system is a spreadsheet. But most real inventory tracking systems, as long as you're pretty good about saying, I received 10 things at $50, inventory value of 500. I received 10 things at $55. That's $550. You can kind of toggle your method of inventory valuation and it'll automatically recalculate, everything that you got based on first in, first out, last in, first out, or average cost. So where that matters, is that obviously, if Jack's been used to paying $50 and I'm going to have to hit him up for 55 at some point in the future, like I either need to say, dude, prices went up. I got to get $5 more out of you, Jack, or I'll split the difference with you. Or alternatively, I need to give Jack the notice. Hey, dude, I got to tell you, this price is good for today, but it is not good 30 days from now. I'm going to have to raise, assuming that I'm going to accept the cost of the price. From there, the next problem that you get into is that whatever, and this sort of has to do with cash flow, is that whatever method that I'm choosing, that's also the method on which I'm paying taxes. So let's imagine this conundrum for a moment, Gary. Same scenario, and you probably need to set a timer. Jack, I'm chopping his bit. I'm kidding. So next scenario is same example. I'm ready to do my tax return, and at the same time, I've also got a borrowing base covenant with my bank, meaning like the bank loans me money on my line of credit based on my inventory value, right? Well, in this particular scenario, if I'm on the FIFO method, my cost of goods sold is lower because I'm at $50. My inventory value is higher because anything that's left is at $55. My taxable income is actually higher because my cost of goods sold was lower. So guess what? I just paid, air quote, maybe more in taxes. But what sucks about that is I don't have the cash to pay for it because guess what? I'm now paying $55 for inventory instead of $5.
Right.
So then I say, my brilliant tax strategist, Adam Boatman, says, you know what you could do? You could do a 3115 accounting method change, and we'll convert this baby over to LIFO. Anytime you've got rising, especially if you think prices are rising, like LIFO is always the best method, we'll go with LIFO. That sounds awesome, man. Like, look at all this money you'll save. That sounds awesome. And then you go to produce that same inventory valuation report to the bank. They're like, well, dude, I can't loan you as much money because you have less inventory because you're using the $50 value associated with the inventory. So you sort of see like the competing conundrum that you're potentially into if I'm trying to A, defer taxes, and B, maximize my borrowing potential. If neither one of those are your problem, kind of no big deal. And then you kind of roll into, this whole talk of like, the country will pay the tax. That's the only way that, first off, the country won't ever pay the tax. Like Great Britain, in this case, they buy brakes from the UK. The UK is not actually going to pay the tax. Like the Inland Department of Revenue is not going to say, hey, Gary, sorry about that $5. Here's your $5 back, right? What's going to happen is Gary's going to have to go back to the brake supplier and say, I'm going to need you to take the price down from 50 down to what's the difference, 45. But in this case, it's actually a polynomial equation, like whatever the number is to get back to the $50 that we were paying before.
Yeah.
It's just a math problem. But Gary's like, the England guy is going to say, very interesting, that you're asking me to pay for your tariff imposed by your government and your country. And, if Gary's big enough, maybe Gary has the purchasing power to be able to say, well, then fine, I'm going to go source from somewhere else. But if either A, Gary isn't big enough, or B, the part is so critical that the only place that I can buy it in the immediate future is from this source in England, I'm kind of stuck with what I got,
Yeah.
So there's really just not, there really is nothing that can be done other than to eat it or try to negotiate how to split the difference between maybe I get it a little bit lower price, maybe I get, maybe I raise my price a little bit to the customer, but I'm stuck in a conundrum. Like there's just nothing, nothing that can be done other than, well, I guess this is just what we're doing now, So that's I'm only saying that to say, like, that's just the reality. Like that's the fact of what actually happens. Like you ordered something from the UK at $50, it's going to show up and you're going to owe $5 on every one of them. That's just it. That's just the deal. Sorry, that's just the reality of what happens with this. I mean, we can decry, like, was this the right thing to do kind of all day long in terms of, like, India or whatever it is having 100% tariff import duty on cars, and there's a billion people in India, so that sure would be a good market to open up to. I agree. Do I want to pay $5 more for a brake part from the UK? Hell no. I don't. Not one bit. I want it actually the other way. I want India to open up, and I want to pay the lowest price possible for my stuff. So however we can make that happen, make that happen.
Yeah.
So I think probably what everybody will agree to is, this is just, you can debate all along what's a good negotiating strategy. This is just a negotiating strategy for something that generally both parties agree needed to have something done about it. But this is just the practical application of the world that we're living in right now and for the foreseeable future that we have to prepare for.
So there are two takeaways from that I have. One is, if you haven't talked to your CPA about your accounting method for your inventory, you better.
Yep.
You better do it now, because there are ramifications from a tax perspective.
Yeah, and what you're going to report to in terms of your borrowing base, depending on which route you go.
So bank borrowing and tax implications. So that's number one. Number two ties back to Jack's 6 personality types in mediation, which it still comes down to conversations, right? I mean, because we're still buying from people, unless you're just ordering off of automatons, which I don't know that, even your purchasing people are just, like, there needs to be a conversation. I was up in Ohio a couple of weeks ago for a board meeting, and they are a manufacturer and they're also a distributor. They manufacture very specialized electrical harnesses for hydraulic actuators in mining equipment. Well, hey, mining is actually going well, because we just did a deal yesterday, evidently, with Ukraine on some of their rare earth stuff. Well, and these guys supply to one of the largest, it's a Japanese manufacturer of heavy industry, that mining equipment. Well, that's great. But they're going through some of the same things, because they also have components, and they are also a distributor of other like pressure sensors and stuff like that. So they have component parts that are coming in from various parts of the world, and it's a mess. I mean, it's a challenge. And so what they're doing is they are having active conversations with others that are in the same boat of uncertainty. So I think, some of the basics still come into play, which is, how do you arrive at win-win situations, or try to, when you're both sides of the table are dealing with interesting realities? Anything that you'd add to that, Jack?
Yeah, I was thinking about, since I'm on kind of like a psychology thought process today, is, we've been talking about the relationships with outsiders, with your vendors, with and the financial aspects of all of that. And I was thinking about how um, the psychology within your organizations, within your business. And we hear a lot about this company is laying off, not just the government agencies, but private companies that are laying off people or making adjustments. And so there's a lot of uncertainty in the workplace. And going back to the culture that we talk about so much over the past 5 years or so, and being mindful of that, and being mindful of what is going on in your colleagues' minds about all of this. We make certain presumptions that they know what's going on, just because by observation on what you're doing as the business owner, or operator in the C-suite, whatever it may be. And that's really not a good presumption or assumption to make, that they know what's going on. There should be communication saying, okay, this is what's going on. And not that I know I see that your plate is full, but I'm going to add a few other things, because we are going to terminate this person, so we have to spread out that person's duties. And congratulations, you got these 2 out of the 10 things on the list, kind of thing. And just assume that because they know all the difficulties that are going on, that they'd be willing to accept that. And so just as you were saying, communication internally, and having check-ins with your people to say, okay, this is what's going on. These are our thoughts, that we haven't seen the impact of price increases yet. I was reading an article that most of us as consumers have not seen that yet. I mean, not everyone has anticipatorily raised prices yet, but that's the ability of wholesalers, of manufacturers, of service providers to not do that is drawing to a close. And there has to be more. There's going to be more reactions to all that's going on, mostly because of the confusion. I mean, you lose either way. Either it's coming,
Yeah.
and you do something about it, or you're not sure if it's coming and you don't want to be caught too far behind in the supply chain, that what you're paying now and paying later, to Adam's point about the inventory controls and costs and everything else. So I just want people to be mindful that don't forget about the people that are closest to you, as you're focusing out beyond the horizon as to what you have to deal with outsiders, with third parties, with suppliers, with your other relationships outside of your office.
Yeah, I mean, I want to think back to 5 years plus ago, almost 5 years and 2 months ago, almost, when we started these things. There was so much uncertainty then. I mean, it was even crazier because, like, how long's this lockdown? What's this going to mean? Like, I mean, we didn't know. And so one of the things that Adam did that first week was, all right, leadership team, we had already prepared for remote work, which was helpful. And we also had systems in place with Standout 2.0, where we were having weekly dialogues throughout the entire company and feedback loops, which was good. But we did daily stand-ups with our leadership team, like, all right, crisis mode, and these are the decision trees that we're going to go down. Like, so we're cutting ourselves first, then we'll keep figuring it out, but we got to manage cash, which is a really important thing, and not making assumptions, and communication internally, but also externally. To your point, when you're in uncertainty, I think the worst thing that you can do is not talk, to just go, as Adam says, ostrich head in the sand. Not a good thing to do. And I was reading a book by Carlos Salum. He wrote a book. He's written a couple of them, but this one is called From Fog to Focus. And he's a coach, so there's a lot of kind of you know, exercises in this, but one of the things that I found most fascinating in this book was a story where he was facilitating it was a merger between a Swiss company and an American company. And back to your psychology analogy, he called them dolphins and sharks. The Americans were the sharks. They were, you know, eating meat for breakfast, and they were just very aggressive. The Swiss were very measured, very thoughtful, very consensus oriented, and the sharks were not. And so they had a 2-day offsite, and Carlos was facilitating this, and the CEO, and the first day was like the train went off the rails, and it was not good. It was like, let's hope that next week's, you know, Thrilla in Manila is not that. I don't think it will be, but it has the potential. So anyway, the CEO couldn't sleep all night. He was worried because, like, this could be a very high profile disaster, because he saw what was going on. The dynamics is us versus them. And anytime you're in an acquisition or a merger kind of a situation, you have those tribal tendencies. So he talked to Carlos the next morning. Carlos noticed, like, this guy, you know, he looks not so great. And like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, I didn't sleep and this and that. And so he said, I don't know what to do. And as a facilitator, that's a pretty awkward position to be in as well. So Carlos said, well, I think what you should do is just be honest with these guys and tell them how worried you are. Now, that's an extremely vulnerable position, and not every Harvard Business Review book would recommend that. No, the general has to be, like, separate from the troops and whatever. But this guy did apply that wisdom and advice, and he did it. And what was interesting is he's like, I don't know what to do. Well, that takes humility as a leader. But what was interesting is a woman from the Sharks, from the Americans, piped up and was like, well, there was all of a sudden empathy. And that last half day that they had together was extremely productive, and it, like, got back on the rails. But it was because that leader was willing to be vulnerable. And I guess the point that I really took from that was, there are times where we are in these moments of crisis and where we don't know what to do. Like, the landscape has changed, and it's kind of like up in Western North Carolina, the river changed. It's bigger, and the maps before don't work because the roads aren't there. So what do? I think having some basic conversations is a great place to do it, to start. And again, call your, and Jack, let's go to the legal side. So we said, hey, call your CPA and work through these scenarios on inventory if you guys are carrying inventory. But let's say you're not, but you're in a contractual obligation where you've signed and you've ordered this stuff. And we're in the middle of that right now. I mean, right now I'm in the middle of it with building out a new place for us at Savona Mill. I think we've had $25,000 already in tariff hits. And that hurts. I mean, that really hurts, because we have a fixed budget. So now what are we going to do? And we're getting these, well, you need to sign it now so that we can secure it. I just had that last night on refrigerators and microwaves and stuff that have to go into this facility. And, it was like $700 more on a $5,000, or no, it was actually $1,200 more on a $5,000 budget item. Like, well, all right, well, we got to do it. We're going to have to find it somewhere else then, but we got to do it. Jack, my question to you is, all right, let's say that you have that contract. Yep, we signed it, go forth and buy.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is know what your contract actually says. Sometimes we sign them and we don't read the boilerplate, which has the information as to the ability to, force things upon one party or the other. The other thing I would say is don't be afraid to go back, talk about humility, go back and have a discussion with those suppliers and say, this is what's going on in my world. And you will encounter possibly a supplier that says, look, you signed a contract, I'm going to shove this in your direction and
Yeah.
you got to take it. Others might be more entrepreneurial and understanding and see opportunities that, okay, rather than me forcing this inventory upon you, and then maybe it's not fully paid for in advance, so they're going to be looking to get payment, and you're basically telling them in advance, I can't pay you because it's cost too much, that they might be able to do something alternatively. So divert that container that was coming across the Atlantic and maybe divert it to someone that is not being taxed, tariffed. And that way they would ship that, get paid, and then when things kind of normalize and we figure things out over here on the other side of the pond, then maybe that resumes. But you'll never know unless you have those conversations. And I think many people are watching all around the world what's going on, and they understand, and many of them will be empathetic to situations where you can't proceed on the obligations via contract that you signed up for prior to all the hubbub that's going on. And so have those conversations, and have your facts together. Don't just go and say, hey, I need relief. Say, okay, I've ordered this amount. I know that I'm not going to be able to, unload or get, continue on the sales process with this. And so can we talk about what I can do, I know I can do, and what I'm having struggles with, and let's talk about that. Don't go in with like, okay, help me, I don't know what to do, because that will not be received well, and it will be perceived as you just panicking without having any objective thought process in putting together a plan that works for both sides. I do
So
also
that
want,
would be the emotional responder.
yes, wow, way to bring it back. Yeah. I also want to say that going back to the internal kind of things, when you're reshuffling around your personnel, and don't assume that the person that you assign something to knows how to do what you assign them to do, just because they may have a certain degree that they graduated with. And so you assume that just because they have a BS in business administration or a master's in accounting or whatever it is, that they can handle what it is. But and the more important point is that give them the ability and the leeway and the comfort to come to you and say, I'm willing to help, but I'm not sure that I'm the right person, or I'm going to need some help on the front end to navigate through this until I learn how to do this better. And then I'm all in, kind of thing. I think that bosses tend to think that they have an open door policy. And I will tell you from personal experience, in one situation that happened a few years ago, I thought, always open door kind of thing, but I apparently did not say enough times, I have an open door, please come in, there's no stupid questions. And as this, and so it was a not a good mentoring moment for me, and I've learned from that. And so I'm sharing that experience with you, so that you don't take for granted that um, you think you have an open door for people to come tell you, hey, I need some help. But in the reality is that they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to show that you may interpret that as them being incompetent, not just for the task that you've assigned them, just overall that you've now labeled them as being incompetent. I've seen that happen with my clients, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, let's rewind the tape and tell me how you got to this point where you're ready to fire this person because you think they're a dumbass. Well, they're not. They just don't know how to do the other stuff that you assign to them, and they are just not strong enough to come to you and ask questions. So, well, of course, I'm not that arrogant, and it's like, okay, we understand that that's not your personality, but that's what you're projecting in the office, and you made in unbeknownst to you. So again, a lot of psychological advice going on here, and I am not a licensed professional, so it's not advice, it is guidance, personal
I
guidance
think that's
with
good.
no medical authorization to even say any of it.
And you didn't stay at the Holiday Inn Express down the street from us here, high atop Camden, 1616 Camden. So right on. But the position, oftentimes it's not even the personality. A lot of times it's the position that somebody's in that is the barrier. So it's not your personality, it's the position. And if you're a leader and you're an owner or whatever, like, you just have to realize that that can be intimidating for somebody. So Papa Joe, it's so good to see you on here. He has a question, and this is for you, Jack. If the tariffs go the other way, should you be negotiating a rollback?
Yeah, and that's a great question. We haven't really talked about the other side of it, which is if you accept the increases and even accept them formally in a contract, there should be a reversionary clause in there that says, okay, and that comes in various forms, which is that we've locked in these prices for a short period of time, 6 months, and then we agree to review. Now, I will tell you, an agreement to agree is not enforceable. It's more of an indication of intention. So you say but terminating the contract and saying that if we do not come to a common ground and agree after 6 months of this locked price, then the agreement is terminated upon the option of notice of one of the parties. So that's the way you build it in by doing that kind of thing. Yes.
Yeah, so it took me a second to kind of interpret that question, even though it was probably quite clear, Papa Joe, but the way I think about that scenario is, Gary is my supplier. He's the importer and paying the tariffs. So as far as I know, I just buy stuff domestically. But Gary has come to me and said, hey, dude, I got bad news. I'm going to have to raise your prices associated with this tariff, blah, blah, blah. Let's go ahead and get you locked in, and so that at least it doesn't get worse,
Yeah.
because it could get worse. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a pretty good idea. What you're basically, the question I think you're asking is like, if for whatever reason the tariff that Gary was paying was suspended or reversed, I shouldn't get stuck with that price increase, since it really was meant to be a pass through, I think was what so you can confirm. Okay, exactly. Thank you, Joe. I didn't screw that up. But, yeah, I'm not the smartest
Good
man.
job.
I'm not the smartest man.
Forrest.
I know what tariffs are. That I'm gonna burn in hell for that one. But I guess the question, Jack, is like, how often do you see in contractual language? Because in the construction business, where this equivalent came up a lot was a fuel surcharge,
Right.
And that, I guess, how often do you see somebody write in, I will agree to a price increase, but only on this only on this thing, not even like we'll agree to negotiate again, but rather like, yeah, like I'll cover the cost of the tariff only as long as there is a tariff.
Right.
And then independent of that, it's like, geez, I can't even imagine, this is just a rhetorical question, but I can't imagine the administrative burden of like, hey, I need to make sure Gary's not screwing me.
Yeah.
6 months down the road, it's like, I've got death by 1,000 paper cuts because either Gary didn't update my pricing or tried to, slide one, between the goalposts while the goalie was, drinking his water or whatever. It's like, I don't know. That's a conundrum.
Yeah, and I think that more so now being reactive that you
Yeah.
see that language, but previously you would see if there was a known fluctuation, then you have language, as I said, that there's a short period of time where prices are locked in, and then somebody can kick themselves out of the deal if they don't like the new pricing, which could be a reduction in price when they're saying, okay, prices have gone down, you want to maintain this price structure, we're out. So that leads me to a comment about, now and later looking at the competition of your suppliers, because I think that it is easy to say, all right, I can absorb that because we have a good relationship, and or assuming that, well, because of the good relationship, they're giving me the best prices. And I've heard that, okay, when you switch race horses, it seems, there's a honeymoon period, but after the honeymoon period, it's worse. And so why make the change? So for all those reasons, you stay where you're at and with whom you're with, and you don't make the change. But, again, take a look around and see what's out there. And if nothing else, use it to have your current supplier bid against themselves. Like I said at the beginning of this with, that the delay in executing an LOI, that it caused an increase in price. That wasn't the purpose of it. It was just to send a message that we weren't in the same ballpark, but that was one of the results of it. So look around, and I hope opposing party never sees this video. Now that I think about it, I probably shouldn't have said anything, but since it's a deal that's running right now, but that's okay.
They're
But
too
yeah,
busy. They're too busy with their heads down in,
that's true. Yeah.
other stuff, so they aren't paying attention. If they were smart, they would, but this would be a great intel on into your psychology. So Papa Joe says prices never ratchet back down as quickly as they go up. That is a true statement in my experience, Papa Joe. And there's a Joe correlation here. Joseph says, to Jack's point, in technology, many times a non-technical person or CIO who doesn't know telecom is spearheading a company move and knows only what the former tech provider has told them as the only way. But using my company's services, all of a sudden, we produce there's 5 or 6 new vendor options that at a better price, and it meets all the needs of the company. There is opportunity in uncertainty. And a lot of it still comes down to the basic stuff, like have a conversation, and, sorry, Jack, but what I've experienced in business is it doesn't matter how thick the document is. It comes down to the integrity of the person that you're shaking hands with that's on the other side of that document. Because when I've had legal documents that were this thick that had me ironclad, when that other person was fickle, then it just came down to whose war chest is bigger. And he had a bigger war chest, so it's like,
and I enjoy negotiations, obviously, but I'm worn out negotiating with Spectrum, with Verizon, with all, because I mean it's the pennies make a difference for me personally, and so that's why I do it. Part of it's sort of fun to say, okay,
you should
yeah,
have been a litigator.
we can't do this, and like that's not the right answer.
Yeah.
And then I pause, and then they're like, okay, what else can we do for you? Or another point is, when you're doing the comparison, make sure you're comparing apples to apples, because, for example, negotiating the rate that they charge me for Spectrum, they said, oh, well, we can do all these things if you add on this, and oh, we're going to drop down the speed for a little bit, and then we'll get you to the same price. And I'm like, no, I understand a modest price increase just because that's the way the world works. But I'm not gonna allow you to jump it up to here like this. And so,
Right.
and I said, we're streaming, we're doing this, we don't really need it, which is not necessarily accurate. It's not a lie, but it's not accurate. We would prefer to have the landline so we can do videos and things like that, right? So,
I
but
got you, Joe. I forgot to check the sleep score. I must be sleeping. Now, I think to echo kind of what you're talking about, Joe, that this is this not at 11:56. I'll go ahead and be Debbie Downer, for a moment. Is that like we're talking now about kind of big contractual things that are
Yeah.
would be considered somewhat strategic to people. I think because I wanted to have the opportunity to get on my healthcare soapbox for a minute. What Joe's saying, and this reminds me of a lot, is like my freaking company health insurance renewal.
Yeah.
And prior to the Affordable Care Act, I can't help you, Gary. Like healthcare costs are just going up, going up, going up, going up. This is ridiculous, said the consumer or the buyer. Can't you do anything? Yeah, we'll try. Next year, I can't help you. Affordable Care Act, that there literally has been almost no difference in my rate of change
Yeah.
pre-ACA,
Yeah.
post-ACA.
Yeah.
Like that's if you look at it in general, healthcare costs are still rising, but the curve's flattened a little bit, relatively speaking, but not like it hasn't gone down,
No.
that's for sure. No one's ever come to me and said, hey, by the way, now that we sorted through that Affordable Care Act mess, I have great news. Everything's gone down because we figured out how to increase the insurance. No, they just, just up. And I just don't, hey, Gary, I really apologize. We're going to have to raise prices due to tariffs. Nobody is taking that back. I've got great news. Yeah. Tariffs are off the table. I'm gonna take a hit,
Right.
like unless it's a strategic contract. So just I don't know. Sorry, not to be Debbie Downer, but I'm with Joe in that statement, because the example that comes to my heart about let's blame something else as a reason to increase prices was definitely the Affordable Health Care Act. Even like in our own world, with I love all of our employees. If we have any employees listening right now, remember that I love you. Inflation happened. Everybody wanted pretty decent raises, and we said, hey, everybody worked hard. You've earned some raises, but keep in mind, a lot of this is inflationary, Don't expect this in the future. What happens the next year? Raises kind of suck this year. But wait a minute. Inflation has gone from 9% back down to 2%. Like, wouldn't you have just thought that that would have been reflective?
No. Entitlement. Entitlement is a human, it's a human condition that's insidious, and it's not it doesn't serve any of us well. That attitude. Entitlement flies in the face of gratitude. Gratitude is an important thing. So I'm going to go back to that. Remember, be intentional about gratitude. It doesn't mean that you have to be thankful for the chaos, but you can find thankfulness in the midst of it. So that's what I'm going to leave you with at the end of this hour. Besides, hey, next week, it's going to be so much fun. Let's see here. All right. So Joseph, I'm going to give you the last word. I use the analogy quite often. Do you want stockbroker giving you advice, or Facebook, Reddit reviews, or need legal advice and go to Google or Reddit? A bad tech contract can put an anchor around your company's growth and prosperity. Any telecom stating that they need to raise prices due to tariffs, you really need to look at changing, as most providers aren't affected at all. Oh, yeah. Using the excuse
opportunistic, one-time land grab. Yeah, that's right. So thanks for that.
That's not capitalism, that's greed. There's a difference. So anyway, BGW CPA YouTube channel. This will be up later on today. Same way with Shoemaker's YouTube channel. And next week, The thriller in
excited.
Manila,
Love
the
it.
red and the blue teams are going at it, and there might be some purple made. Who knows? We'll see. Thank you guys. Thank you, Jack. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
All right, see
Bye.
you guys.
Bye.